How many of you like to hear some stories about down on the farm?
Yes.
Who wants to start over here?
Doug, there's still some people like Glenn doing dishes. They might not want to miss.
Yeah, you're right. So can we talk about stuff that they don't want, that they wouldn't want to hear? Yeah, right.
The Ruth would tell all kinds of stories about me.
Yeah,
But I can't tell much about her.
I liked her story about my dad and the mouse. Remember that one? My dad and the mouse. He dropped the mouse down your neck.
You pulled it out of ice water.
It had drowned, had it?
Well, it's still kicking.
And he dropped it down your neck?
I was making sandwiches. Years later, he told me what I saw.
Oh. Sometimes it takes years for siblings to feel sorry.
I don't know what happened.
What do you think of these little penguins and gargles? Are you saving those? You just zero in on them.
You're saving them this time? So you can have a nap.
I don't know. I'll face on there.
Okay, does anyone want to start off by asking questions, or you guys just want to start talking about days and
I have a question.
ask questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Since moving to Estevan, living in Estevan, talking either to Jean Frederick or Eleanor Mackenzie, one of them mentioned that there was, when one of us kids were going to be born, Dad was out hunting and there was a snowstorm and he didn't return. Do you know anything about that one? She wasn't sure which one it was, or if you were living. It might have been you were living in Carlisle. Maybe it was Doug because December birthday.
Okay, he's talking about big snowstorm when some of us were born.
Well, August for me, so it wouldn't be a
I
snowstorm.
remember that.
But I'd like a little more information
It was
about
me.
that.
Trying to recall and I'm not having a lot of success. It seems like that the birth of his child did not have priority over hunting.
That's what I gathered.
That sounds
It could be that he thought, hey, I can get the deer and still get home in time. And
But he did.
it was, I don't know.
It wasn't me because I was born at Christmas time, and Sharon and Darla stayed with Uncle Phil and Grandma and Grandpa down on the farm, because I was born in Carlisle, and there was a big snowstorm, and Dad had promised he'd be back to have Christmas dinner with Mom. I was born on the 22nd. He got stuck in a big snowstorm getting back from the farm back to Carlisle, but he did make it. But she was rather upset, and it didn't seem like he was going to be there for Christmas with her. And Sharon to this day has been upset because her mother wasn't with her at Christmas.
I'm not upset, but it was hard having Christmas without our mother.
Maybe it was Carolyn that he was hunting for, where she was born
I
in
hope
August.
in August it was supposed to be me.
Yeah. It's probably her.
But you get kind of passionate about that hunting.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand that because he was probably hunting for food for his family. And it was Doug who knew that he had to have a lot of food because Grandpa used to say that Doug had a hollow leg.
Okay.
I got some stories.
A question over here.
Does anybody know how they preserved food in ancient of days?
Okay, Andrew's gonna answer that one.
Well, we lived on a farm, so we produced a lot of our food. We had a great big potato patch. They plowed it out with the plow, and when the potatoes were grown, and we went along and filled the pails with potatoes and dumped them in the truck and hauled them home and let them roll into the basement, into a big bin. We had carrots that we put into sand. We had great big Hubbard squash that we took out to the granary and buried into the grain, and it didn't freeze. We canned all kinds of vegetables. You didn't have a freezer, so you canned all kinds of vegetables and had these rows of jars in the basement. And you canned some fruit because a lot of fruits were only seasonal, that you could buy them in the store. Apples you could buy in the winter time, and Dad would buy a big box of apples and put them in the basement, and every once in a while in the evening he would fill a bowl and bring it up and set it up for us to have an apple each. In the winter time they could butcher, and we could then freeze the meat again in the granary. In the summertime, if you butchered, you had to can the meat and to boil it in a big old boiler for about 4 hours to can it. But you know, we managed all that work, and I thought the fall was the happiest time there was when you bring in all that produce and everything. Does that answer your question?
We had a well that had a crib in it. We actually hung the milk and the cream in the well right down into the water. It was about 20 feet or 15 feet, depending on what the water level was at that time. Something else that it didn't happen all the time, and I don't know, back in Ruth's early memory, maybe it wasn't true, but the community had what they called a meat ring. And so the farmers took turn butchering, and they would butcher an animal, and then everybody in the community got a piece. And it was so planned that if you got steak this month, you got something else next month. And so we actually that way had fresh meat once a month, and that was really nice. Community effort, so when your turn came, you went out to the pasture, selected the animal, and butchered it, and then went and delivered to all of your neighbors.
Tell us a little bit about milking and what you did with the milk and how many cows you milked, stuff like that. Milk it was interesting.
I was gonna say that one time when they butchered, I remember riding horseback 4 miles across to Huttons to deliver the meat to them. The horse doesn't like that fresh meat smell.
Take off on you?
No, we made it.
Milking cows. Various times we had amounts. We milked, was after my other siblings had all gone, and we were milking 20 cows by hand, morning and night. Dad would do the feeding and started the milking, and we would finish it together.
How long would it take on the film?
Probably an hour.
And how many were milking? How many people were milking?
Well, that depends what year it was. It used to be Mary and I, and Dave was kind of allergic to animals, so when he was around, he was kind of excused from the milking. So in my memory, it would be mostly Mary and I, and possibly Dad.
My day it was David and I.
How many cows?
Usually over 20.
And so we didn't sell my milk. The milk was separated, and we sold the cream. The cream was hung down in the well, and once a week, creamery truck would come and pick it up. And then another week, a check would come, and that check usually went to You know, to one of the other kids, like Ernie, and who in those days was pastoring small churches, who needed some help, and probably Jack and Ruth got some of them. Northern Lights Mission got quite a few of them. When I was younger, I kind of questioned that because there were so many things on the farm that we never really went without, but there were so many things on the farm we needed. And here we were milking these 20 cows, and you know, all the income from it was going out there. I understand that now. But a 15-year-old, you wonder.
And Ruth told me about milking all the cows one time because Grandpa had taken everybody to Crosslands Camp or something, and you were left alone.
We used to do shifts to Trossachs Camp, and I don't know how come, and I don't know if this is absolutely true, but it's the way it is in my mind, that I was the one that got left home, and the others went to Trossachs Camp to leave some there, to pick up the ones that were there, because it was 2 weeks, and they were changing shift. And I got left, and they were supposed to be coming home in time to help me milk. But I remember walking out in the pasture by myself and thinking, boy, I gotta be careful. If something happens to me, there's nobody to come and get me. I got the cows home, and I was just finishing milking. I don't know how many there were, but I suppose 20-some. When I heard the car come in the driveway.
Yeah, we lived out in the boonies, and you know, probably now people wouldn't do that, but we were left home alone when I was in my young teens. Mary was 3 years older, and Mom and Dad would go up to northern Alberta to see Jack and Ruth, you know, to go to camp up there. We were left home on the farm to look after the farm for a week or 10 days, and make hay and look after whatever, you know, just kids.
Talk about the change from horses to power equipment. That probably happened before everybody else. Because I know it was all horses back then. Some of the pictures you can see on here of the farm, some of the older ones, it was all horses. But
Well, in the 20s, they actually had a tractor, but then in the 30s, they couldn't operate the tractor. So when farming was done with horses. And so my early memories of farming was all horses. And 5 horses on a 2-gang plow. For those of you who have any sort of knowledge of size, 5 acres a day you plow. Now they cultivate, I need to do a little calculation, but 5 acres wouldn't even last 5 minutes. So, you know, and there was 6 horses on the seed drill. They had a disc of big horses. Dave was very innovative. He was always looking for an easier way to do something. And so he apparently was assigned to plow this field, and I still remember which field it was. And so we had the plow for the tractor was a 3-bottom plow, and the horse plow was a 2-bottom plow. The horse plow would take 5 horses, and the tractor plow would take 8 horses to pull it. And so he got 13 horses. And by himself, because most of, like, Dad wouldn't help him in these ventures of his.
That's right.
Yeah, I was young. So he strings these 13 horses out in the field, and he plows. He did a 5-bottom plow. I don't know how efficient it was because it takes a little while to hook up 13 horses. Or even get it set up, you know, the plow's my actually working in the field with horses was very limited. I did quite a bit hay, mowing and raking, hauling hay with horses. But I didn't really, I don't think I ever really drove 6 horses in the field. I don't think I ever did. I wanted to.
Okay, you were talking about 5 acres. About how much land, let's say in the 40s, was Grandpa farming? Remember? There's pasture land, I know that.
Yeah.
How much land altogether? And
Like after the, and Ruth could probably help earlier, and I don't know when they moved to that, how much my grandpa and grandma had. But in the 40s, we were farming, cultivating 6 quarters.
How much is a quarter and how much is an acre?
A quarter is a half a mile square, a half a mile by half a mile. That's 160 acres. The section is 360 acres. Now, when I say we were farming that, one section was rented. So they owned with the pasture land, they owned 2 other sections, but not a lot of that was under cultivation. That later expanded to another half section. They had one section was, one pasture was a mile square.
So the section was 640.
Yeah, you're right. The half section was
I'm
360.
old enough to know that.
Yeah, I was thinking a half, yeah, 360, sorry. 320.
Yeah, 320.
A strip of land, 16 and a half feet wide and a half mile long is an acre. And I'm not into metrics.
Let's go on. I just share a little bit about those 30s, if you would, because Uncle Phil was pretty young in the 30s, but that group, there were some hard times there because it didn't rain and the wind blew and the dust blew. And tell a little bit about that.
Well, they were very hard times, and I know, as you say, my mother was a worrier, and she worried, but I can understand why, because all of us kids were home. The boys were not quite old enough to work out, and if they were, there was no jobs. And you know how boys can eat and wear out clothes, and then there was Louise was home, and I was there, and Phil was a year or 2 old. And I remember, and I think I wrote it in the book, the government was wanting us, they wouldn't give us any assistance because we had too many cattle. You can sell your cattle and then you don't have money and you can live. And my dad says, no, if I sell my cattle, then I'll have nothing. And for years and years, we'll have nothing to live on because we can't build back the herd. And so they were always there. And I remember one night when a man came out to buy some cattle, and my dad really needed some money, and I think he knew it. And so he didn't offer too much money for the cattle. And my dad didn't want to sell it, but he needed the money. And they bickered back and forth, and finally my dad let them go. I remember he was angry, but he got the money. And then is when we took the trip to the north to Grandma.
But how many cattle did you move north?
I'm not sure, but usually we wintered about 100 head, didn't we, Phil?
Well, in my memory, between 80 and 100.
Yeah. And then in the fall.
It wouldn't have been that many going to go north, I'm sure.
Maybe not. Probably not. But anyway, it was a good-sized herd that they took.
How far was it north to Rama from Northview?
I wanna say about 200 miles, but that might be wrong.
I think that's
Not
what
wrong?
That's what's in that book.
Yeah, I'd
It's
say
probably
about
too much.
I was gonna say 150, but
It took us 2 weeks, and I thought we went about 20 miles a day, but maybe we didn't. But on Sunday, we stopped over in Capel Valley and we didn't travel, because it was Sunday.
also horses need a rest.
Okay, some other questions?
Were you all born in Canada, or do you have any recollections of the trip over from Europe?
That was a long time before you.
What was that?
You want to say?
I think that's a loaded question.
No, I have no idea.
Oh, he doesn't know. Go ahead. He doesn't know. Don't feel hurt.
My dad was born in Germany. My grandma and grandpa Betcher, they were both born in the States. And so when they came to Canada, they were American citizens, but they did get, in those days, the term would be British citizen, Canadian citizen. I think Dad was 3 years old when they came over.
Oh.
My dad.
It says on the thing 6 months.
Yeah, there's a discrepancy in some of those records as to when they sailed, when they say when
Yeah.
this.
There's a picture of his passport.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think he's a little older than that.
Okay. But that was before this generation. That was the generation before. Lynn?
I was gonna ask what the dynamics of the family was, because I know my mom used to talk about things like hiding in the hayloft to read books and, you know, to get away and stuff like that, or her and Ernie would go off and leave baby behind and things like that. Got any interesting stories about that?
She says she wasn't talking about dynamics of the family. Her mom talked about going off the hayloft to read books and her and Ernie going off and ditching babe and things like that.
There was a lot of conflict in the family.
Yeah.
Ruth probably knows a lot more about that, and particularly Ernie and Louise.
The dynamics change. I mean, you know that even in your own families. As children grow and new children are added. So I guess the dynamics when I was growing up were maybe different than when Phil was growing up. But I don't remember a lot of discord. I remember the 3 boys, well, especially Ernie and John. They kind of went together, and Dave, he was kind of left on his own, and so Dave and I kind of chummed and did things more together.
How many years between you and Dave?
2.
2 years.
There's 2 years. There's the first 4. There's 2 years between them all. Louise, Ernie, John, David, and I. 5 of us. 2 years between each of us. So not a lot of difference in age. And then Louise was the oldest, so I mean, she was 8 years old or so when I was born. She didn't want a baby sister, and I can understand. She didn't want another baby to take care of. There's already 3 brothers. She tells me she was angry. And, I don't know, but to me, I look back and I think of a happy time growing up as a child. I argued with the hired men, and they played with me.
You want to add anything else, Phil? Any more questions?
Other than, when my mother found out she was pregnant with me, she was not happy. She did not need another person. I mean, that was the middle of the Depression.
But then, if you read a letter that she wrote, yeah.
The sun rose and set on Uncle Phil, and he was about 1.5 to 2.
Yeah, she tells the.
And I never since.
And we're all glad that
But she
she had
didn't,
another baby. It was you.
she didn't tell, and this, you know how dumb we were back there? I was 9 years old, I didn't even know my mother was pregnant.
Yeah.
When did you find out?
When he was born.
And she looked after me.
Yeah. She looked after me too. And Ruth told the story of
schoolhouse or something for a meeting, and you know, his dad, he always asked me, he says, you do this, you do that. So I'm supposed to lead the singing or something, so I was up there leading the singing. And here comes Doug marching up the main aisle to tell me you need to go to the bathroom.
How old would Doug have been then?
Probably 2 or so, yeah.
Yeah.
And Ruth, I started reading some of your book last night, and I noticed that you were a caregiver for many members of the family. You started with my dad, and you helped teach him school, and it sounded like you were sent here and there and everywhere to help this family, whether it was Ernie's or someone else. You were always helping the members of the family, and you kind of served as almost a mother. Just tell us a bit about how that.
I think when Gwen was born, she went to help Ruby.
Yeah, after Glenn was born. Yeah, I went with Ruby was ill. I don't know, I guess I was just asked to do that or expected to do it. I didn't quite get all your question, but was it about me being a caregiver?
Yeah, just how did it go?
Well, I guess I was just, the need was there, so you do it.
There's another concept here that is probably foreign to the younger generation, is that you were expected to work till you're 21, you know, at home, with no pay whatsoever. After you got 21, you know, things would change. So if somebody needed Ruth and she was 19, they'd send her off.
And it was also, became a bit of a conflict with my dad, because when he went off and worked, and he wasn't 21 yet, and his dad, grandpa expected him to send the money back, give the money back to him. My dad did not like that at all. I don't know if he did or if he didn't, but I know he mentioned it. That was an old country thing, and it was brought over, and they felt it should be that way, and my dad rebelled against it.
So what about if you married before you were 21 and you had your own family to look after?
I don't know if they married that young, did they?
You just had to wait till you were an adult, basically.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, your dad wrote a letter to my dad and my mom and dad. I tell you, they almost split up over that letter.
They were on either side, eh?
Brown, they thought it was horrible.
Is that right? Yeah, see, that's the conflict, even back in those generations, the conflict between the generations. As one generation sees something in a different view than the way that we've always done it, and the problem of friction that can come. And both Louise and Dad, being the older two are always interesting, the older ones, because they have a tendency to be trendsetters and be bossy and tell everybody what they're supposed to do for the younger ones, and they also are the ones usually that break away and set things. The middle children and the younger children play different roles, really. And I think in that Ruth, she was a giver. It's in her heart. And as you see in the...
Still is.
Yeah.
Still is.
That's a fantastic heritage.
Also, there weren't opportunities for women, so if you never got married, you could spend your whole life going from one family member whenever they had a baby and helping out, or you could just stay home with your parents and take care of them for the rest of their lives. So, yeah, the opportunities for women were very limited.
So if they weren't allowed to leave home till 21, did you have to wait till 21 to take any further education? And at what level of education would the average person have at home? Were there schools or what?